Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, January 18th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 227 days. The game against Michigan in 313 days. Those countdowns are both about football. Today's a big one for the Ohio State football program. It's a deadline for players to declare for the NFL draft. Over the weekend, the Buckeyes got some good news as Thayer Munford announced he would be back for another year. Other big names like Sean Wade, Josh Myers, Jonathan Cooper, Blake Haubeil, Drew Chrisman announced they were leaving for the NFL. We'll be back to talking football tomorrow once we have a final list of who's returning and who's leaving. But today, we're going to talk a little hoops. My guest this morning is Mick Walker. He's a recruiting analyst for Buckeye Scoop. He covers a lot of basketball for us. He also hosts the Anything But Football podcast with Matt Goldman. Mick, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Matt, Tom, I'm not going to lie. I thought about not trying to tell you I wasn't available after what happened to transpire with our baseball teams recently. Still sort of licking my wounds about that, but I'm happy to come on. Happy to talk some Buckeye basketball as long as we don't get into Frankie Lindor being a Met.
Yeah, we'll leave the Lindor stuff to the side for now. I'm not devastated by that trade. Put it that way. Also not devastated. Probably right now, Chris Holtmann probably feeling pretty good. 3 big wins in the last week. Huge one over the weekend at Illinois. And not only do they win 3 games, 2 of them on the road in the Big Ten against good opposition, but they're doing it right now without 2 of their top point guards. C.J. Walker, Jimmy Sotos, both out right now. How have they been dealing with that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways that sort of limited how Chris Holtmann exactly wanted to run his offensive game plan. Obviously, Jimmy and C.J. were the guys that know the system through and through and can get everybody running it. But excluding the Illinois game, which was a bit of just trying to out-physical Illinois, which worked, if you look at the stats, Ohio State's attempting like 4 to 5 more three-point attempts per game, which numbers would show if you attempt more, there's a chance that you make more. And I think inserting Justin Ahrens, who has been sort of a shot in the arm for this team when it comes to both offensively and defensively. And then you got the secondary playmaking of guys like Justice Suing, Dwayne Washington Jr., Michi Johnson, all guys that I don't think they expected a lot out of when it comes to being point guards, especially Michi coming in. And I know we'll talk more about him later, but just seeing those guys, especially I believe it was Dwayne had his career high with 23 and 6 assists against Northwestern. Then you see EJ blow up and just hit all these different three-point attempts against Illinois. They're really supplementing with a lot of different game plans. And I think one thing that we have to talk about is they're doing a lot of great stuff defensively against some of these bigs. We were really questionable about how they would handle it with Liam Robbins after seeing how he just thrashed them when they went into the barn. Kofi Coburn, he had 15 points, but you went 7 for 7 from the field, but you really limit him. And they went with a clear intention of not giving him easy baskets, putting him at the line. So really without those point guards, they've played a lot faster. It seems like they've got better shots off of it. And the defense, I think, is just knowing without CJ, and it's added more length around the perimeter, taking sort of CJ who's 6'1" out. I think that's helped. I feel like you just have more athleticism, more size, and more shooting ability when you take CJ out. But obviously the basketball IQ, and as they sort of saw at the end of the game yesterday against Illinois or Saturday afternoon, free throw shooting obviously is going to lock without CJ Walker, who I believe they showed has only missed 1 free throw a year. They're still going to miss him, but I think the way they sort of supplement him has been perfect for this team, just using their athletes, using their shot makers, and getting more shots up.
Yeah, the coaching staff has definitely had to be pretty creative without those guys around, and they've kind of worked around it for now. Obviously, they would probably love to have both of those guys back to just have some more depth and some more options and some more ways to attack teams. Do you have a sense for how long those guys are expected to be out?
I believe Jimmy's sort of listed day to day. Our own Matt Goldman was there at the rack when that whole game took place and was within distance of seeing it, earshot, everything of when the injury went down. I think it's something along the lines of maybe a shoulder dislocation, something to sort of just working back from. CJ Walker's is a little more interesting. It's a little more questionable. Torn ligaments in the hand. If you look that up, any sort of ligament damage is weeks of injuries. It's not day to day. It's not something you can rehab real quickly, especially when you go back and look that Chris Holtmann said that this is something CJ's been dealing with since the preseason when he injured it. You don't know how bad that ligament damage is. You don't know how long it's been going on and what the extent is. So I think it's something he's still going to have to balance. And if we see CJ Walker before the end of the season, I think it's him just toughing out and knowing this is probably his last season of basketball at Ohio State, and he's trying to make it worth his while. It'll be it's tough for me to see him going back out there is what I'm trying to say in a short way.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier Michi Johnson, one of the guys who's kind of stepping up to starting to fill those guys' shoes a little bit. He's someone you covered in high school. He enrolled early. He's still supposed to be a high school student, and now he's making an impact in the middle of the Big Ten basketball season. So I'm assuming he's ahead of where I expected him to be right now. Is that true for you as well?
Yeah, most definitely. Because I said it to Matt when we opened up our podcast the other day, but now the list continues. You throw in the fact that since debuting, he's had to go against and guard Geo Baker from Rutgers, experienced Big Ten point guard, Boo Buie, who's exploded onto the scene for Northwestern this year. And then you add in Trent Frazier, who's been a stud for 4 years at Illinois. He's had to go against some tough Big Ten point guards and even some crunch time situations, especially when you look at the Illinois game, and he's handled it masterfully. Michi's always been sort of this big shot maker, big shot taker, a very boisterous personality. I liken him a lot to Dwayne Washington when Matt and I talking about him. I think they're a lot of the same personality, a lot of the same game. But as Dwayne has done since CJ Walker went out, Michi is playing very smart basketball, which is something that I think a lot of people sort of criticized of him in high school. He was a very erratic player you had to reel in a little bit to get him to play on the offense. And I mean, that happens with a lot of big time guys in high school. They're the star. They're going to get their shots and everything like that. But Michi's been reeled in. He's playing within the confines of the offense. They're sort of making him work on the defensive end, and he's fighting through everything he can. Seeing the development and the matureness that Michi's game has right now is probably the most shocking thing to me. I knew he was going to throw shots up and make some shots for Ohio State, but seeing how mature his overall game outside of offensively has been honestly a little bit of a shock to me, and that's coming from a person that saw him 4 or 5 different times this summer, and seeing how he went from being before that to this summer and even now it's exponential growth every time.
And you're starting to see him play 10, 12, 14 minutes a game quite frequently. And that's true of another freshman as well. Zed Key is kind of in that role as well, where you're starting to see that number of minutes creep up, and he's turning into like a legitimate presence for them off the bench. What does he bring to the team? Yeah,
this is something that you and I talked about before the podcast. You look at the Big Ten teams at the top of the standings. You got Iowa with Luka Garza, Minnesota with Liam Robbins, Michigan with Hunter Dickinson, and then obviously Illinois is one of the top teams in the country, and they have Kofi Coburn and one of the best teams in the Big Ten. You also look at Wisconsin with Micah Potter, former Ohio State player and transfer. You need to have a dominant wall-size big in the Big Ten. I mean, nobody defines that better than Kofi Coburn, but we saw it a few times on Saturday. Zed Key took Kofi Coburn to the paint and worked him a little bit. Zed's very agile. Zed's very moves very well, and I believe it was I can't think of his name. JJ Solinger, Jared Solinger's older brother, tweeted this out during the game, and you're sort of starting to see it was that his mind is catching up with where his physical traits and his skill is, and it's really coming together for Zed, not only offensively but defensively. It's something the Buckeyes are going to need because EJ is obviously a great athlete, but he's not the brick wall solid big in the Big Ten that you want. And Kyle Young is solid, but I don't know if he's the athlete. I think Zed's sort of a perfect mixture of what you want from EJ and Kyle. And knowing that he can give you these quality minutes off the bench is huge. And one more note on Michi, if you look at the Illinois box score, outside of the 5 starters, he was the guy over Seth Towns, over Zed Key, that touched the court the most. And, I mean, when you have contributions from him, Zed, it's coming a lot together for a team that lost a lot and is hitting a lot of adversity. And they're still fighting through it with this 3-game win streak.
Yeah, I mean, and those 3 wins were not, this was not, they beat Nebraska twice and, a team from the MAC. These are 3 solid wins on the road at Rutgers, home against Northwestern. And that's a Northwestern team that beat them in Evanston in a comeback. Looked like they might be coming back on them again and then didn't. And then at Illinois, which of those 3 was the biggest statement win to you?
Oh, it definitely has to be the Illinois win, which is probably the obvious answer here. But I've mentioned a few times now, but after seeing what Liam Robbins did to Ohio State in that game in the barn, you were feel for what Kofi Coburn could do. And like I said, he was 7 for 7, 15 points. But really offensively, you expected a lot more from Kofi because you thought he could be able to take guys like EJ, Kyle, Zed to the paint and work them a little bit. They made a conceded effort to not let him get easy touches, work for everything. So to see them do that and hold Ayo Dosunmu not down, but slow him a lot. I mean, you factor in he had 22 points, 6 of 16 from the field. And then you limited Trent Frazier, guys like that. Limiting Trent Frazier is something that I wouldn't have expected, especially seeing as you're down 2 point guards and you have a high school senior playing on the court. A lot of things went right, and I think Tony said it on a tweet, but Tony said that Ohio State brought a lot of grit to Illinois, and that's really what they did. They went in there, they out-physicaled, out-toughed, and out-gritted a team that was probably better talent-wise and is typically better at all three of those phases than them, and came out with what was really a start-to-finish victory that, I mean, there was times where it got close, but you never really questioned it. They controlled the game for most of those 40 minutes on the court, and it was great to see for the Buckeyes that really needed to get a win against this team.
Yeah, I mean, they had an 18-point lead at one point in the first half. They trailed for exactly 26 seconds all game. When you go on the road against a higher-ranked team in the Big Ten and you're leading or tied for all but 26 seconds of the game, that is controlling the game. And it did get a little nerve-wracking, I think, for Ohio State fans towards the end, but they hung on and won. And they did that despite an off night from Dwayne Washington. They beat Northwestern earlier in the week when E.J. Liddell didn't make a bucket from the field. And when Dwayne Washington was off, Liddell went off. When Liddell was off, Dwayne Washington went off. And before that at Rutgers, they had 4 guys who were between 12 and 17 points. And, this is starting to look like the kind of team that can beat you in a lot of different ways. And that's the kind of team that tends to be a tough out when you get to March.
Yeah, of course. And that's just how this team is going to be. This is how the team was coming into the year. You sort of hope that they would find one guy that could take the court and take the ball and be that guy. In a lot of sense, I think Dwayne is that guy when it comes to leadership on the court, making free throws down the stretch. He's very talented, but I don't think he was what Caleb Wesson was last year, or even maybe Katie Bates-Diop and Jayshawn Tate, guys like that Chris Holtmann has had. He's very talented, but he's not neither him or EJ or that. And just seeing how they put together a lot of team victories, and I think you could see how Holman's loving how this team's playing right now by his quote after the Northwestern game where he talked about this is one of the best victories they had all year. It's one of the proudest. I'm forgetting the exact quote, but just talking about how proud he was and how big of a victory it was. He knows that this team doesn't have that star on it, and they weren't expecting to have it, but they're supplementing it with a lot of guys playing hard defensively, playing hard offensively, and just working their butt off to win these games. And that's how you saw this 3-game win streak come together with 2 road games on it.
And this is a question that would have sounded completely nuts a week ago, but after 3 straight wins, couple on the road against good opposition, and then Michigan just got annihilated at Minnesota over the weekend, could the Buckeyes actually make a run at winning the Big Ten this season?
All right, they got Purdue up next, and then Purdue and Iowa. When you look at the Big Ten standings, it goes as follows: Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Purdue at the top 5. You obviously want to get that one against Purdue, who is a team that has a big and has another big that took the Ohio State bigs to town a little bit when they went to West Lafayette. You hope that Ohio State can sort of rebound from how that performance was last time, get another win over Purdue, and separate them a little bit because both teams sit at 5-3 right now. Wisconsin game is going to be big. I think Ohio State has the chance with a guy like Micah Potter is not a big like you would look at with Hunter Dickinson, Kofi Cover, and Liam Robbins or Luka Garza. They are both. Micah Potter is more of a slender big that's going to move around a lot, and I think Kyle Young in a lot of ways is built to sort of adapt and go against that. If they could pull off a win against Wisconsin, it looks a lot more likely. You look at the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, Michigan and Iowa. They both have a very talented wings and a very talented big, and Iowa honestly probably has the Big Ten Player of the Year and probably the country's Player of the Year when it comes to Luka Garza. You have to hope the Buckeyes can steal one of them from Iowa, and then they only get Michigan 1 game this season. And I have to check the record, but I'm pretty sure Chris Holtmann has a pretty good record against Michigan. I think he just knows how to get those guys going, much like Ryan Day does when it comes to the football field. The guys down in Columbus just know how to get them playing against Michigan. So you'd hope that they can pull that 1 game out this year when they play the Maize and Blue. A lot of it's going to come down to these next 2 games. If you can build to 5, and then I believe after that they have Michigan State, build to 5, maybe 6 games in a row, then you're really cooking. And after that Michigan State game, I believe that's when you get the first matchup against Iowa in Iowa City, February 4th. And that's really, if they can get to 6 straight wins going into Iowa City, then the chances of them having a shot at the Big Ten title go up exponentially if they can even pull off that game.
Well, generally the goal in college basketball in Columbus, Ohio is be playing interesting games when football season ends and people go, oh yeah, hey, there's a basketball team. And this team has definitely done that and more. This is It was not a super fantastic week in Ohio State athletics last week, but Chris Holtmann and his crew did everything they could to make it a pretty solid 7-day stretch. So, Mick, thank you for joining us. You can follow Mick and Matt Goldman and their podcast, Anything But Football. It is that is on the Buckeye Scoop podcast network. You can just search Buckeye Scoop on wherever you find this. Search Buckeye Scoop. You can find that. They do a great job covering everything from basketball, wrestling, whatever else, as the podcast says, anything but football. So that's one of our great shows. Tony Gerderman and I have the Buckeye Weekly podcast. We'll have another couple of episodes of that this week. Gives in the Bank, Mark Givler and Bill Green. Alex Gleitman has Around the Oval. He just had on Aaron Hodges, who is a former Ohio State recruiting staffer who was with Purdue the last couple of years. Really good conversation there. That was more than an hour. Really, really good conversation. These are all fantastic shows. You should listen to all of them. Just search Buckeye Scoop on whatever your podcast platform of choice is to find those. Also, make sure you check out BuckeyeScoop.com. We've got a lot of great coverage, a lot of great insider analysis and access you just can't get anywhere else. As we head into the stretch drive before National Signing Day for college football, going to be a very, very busy week as we get the guys leaving for the NFL, coming back for one more season, sorted out on the football team. And man, oh man, is it going to be a busy and exciting time in the transfer portal. Guys coming in, guys going out. You can get all the access, all the insight, all the analysis only at BuckeyeScoop.com. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.